back, baby. Back with another episode. Being sung in, as always, by the incomparable Nick Bossy. Cocaine Sunrise. Search Nick Bossy on Spotify or Apple Music, wherever you listen to your music. Also follow Nick Bossy Music on Instagram. Shout out to Nick. He's let me use his music as my intro music since day one, and for that I'm very, very thankful. And with that being said, welcome to another episode of Who Gives a Dram. Today's going to be an episode of firsts on the podcast because today is going to be the first listener questions episode where I'm going to answer the questions that you all have submitted. And I know what the questions are. I saw them. And the ones that I'm answering are very... They're very up the alley of Who Gives a Dram. Let's put it that way. Make sure you're following us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening and consuming this content. Make sure you leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It'd really help me out. Coughed within the first minute and a half. Great. Check me out on Bourbon with Friends as well. Go check out our podcast over there. We have our weekly podcast as well as Drinks with Friends with Samantha and Kate, two of the best and funniest girls that I know, talking all things alcoholic beverages. So go check out Bourbon with Friends on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube as well. So I decided that I wanted to do a listener questions episode this week because I've never done it before, and I gotta be honest, last week I had my pal Chris from the Whiskey Noobs podcast on the show, and we had a great time, a great conversation, had a nice long conversation after we went off the air as well. And I have been, looking through his content and looking through his stuff, and he does a listener questions episode every month, and I thought, I'm not going to copy Chris because I'm going to give him a shout out on the podcast, but I think that would be a good idea for me to do as well. I have posted questions on my Instagram story sticker in the past, and I always get a bunch, and they're usually really funny, and I never end up answering them because I end up having a guest on, and then I have another episode and I forget, and then it just turns into a big thing. So I wanted to dedicate an entire episode this week to strictly answering listener questions, and that's what we're going to do. I am on a bit of a cut this week because I am going to one of my very dear friends' weddings. Jordan, my good buddy Jordan Dutra, you probably know him from the St. Patrick's Day episode. He was the last guest on, and he is getting married. He is getting married this week. I still can't believe it. He's I've known Jordan for probably my whole life, to be completely honest. He's my cousin's best friend, which by extension makes him basically my cousin, because that's how my family works. We're basically one big happy family. And I've known Jordan since I was a kid, and since I've been able to, grow up, since I've grown up and I've been able to drive places and especially drink alcohol, I've just become so much closer with him. And he's engaged to his lovely fiancée Marissa, who is a sweetheart in her own right, and they're just so great for each other. So I'm very, very, very excited to celebrate Jordan and Marissa this weekend, and I wish them nothing but the best. They're two beautiful people, and me and Jordan, and several of my cousins, whether it's Matt or Ryan, who's been on the podcast, Tom, Kale, we've had some really, really classic, Connor Gleason. We've had some really classic moments together, and some some core memories I have with Jordan. So I'm excited to celebrate him and Marissa this Saturday. That's going to be out in Massachusetts. And for that reason, because there's a wedding coming up, I'm on a little bit of a cut. So I'm not really going to drink alcohol. I'm not really going to eat a lot. of junk food this week. I'm going to try to kind of slim out for the week so I feel good going into Saturday, so I look good in my suit. My suit is currently at the dry cleaner getting washed. I got a few shirts getting washed, the whole 9 yards. And I also need to go pick up a new suit that I'm going to buy specifically for the Bourbon Ball in just about a month. So, by the way, if you are interested in the Bourbon Ball, check out Bourbon Ball KY on Instagram. It is presented by Bourbon and Friends, and it's a 2-day event. June 30th at Castle and Key, July 1st at the Kentucky Castle. It's going to be the best time. So go check that out if you haven't, or if you are interested in attending the Bourbon Ball. There's going to be a silent auction, 5-course meal. Bardstown is doing a VIP private tasting the day of the ball on July 1st. VIP members for June 30th get a private tasting in Warehouse B at Castle and Key with several of their unique whiskeys. So it's going to be a great time for everybody, and go check that out. So no whiskey for me today, which is part of the reason why I kind of wanted to do this listener question episode, so I don't have to review a whiskey. With that being said, I also lifted today, and sometimes when you train, it makes you not want to lift as much, or I'm sorry, it makes you not want to drink as much, which is not a bad thing. I mean, listen, and again, something that Chris and I on last week's episode talked about. We don't do this whiskey thing to get drunk every single night. Yes, it can be very fun most of the time to get a little bit tuned up when you're working and drinking whiskey, whether you're doing tastings, or you're doing a review, or you're doing a podcast with a guest. It's always fun. Like, that's kind of an upside, but you don't want to overdo it. So I've been actively trying for the past 6 or 8 months to not overdo it. And my conversation with Chris kind of just emphasize that because he's very big on, not letting that passion for whiskey turn into alcoholism, basically. So one thing I will mention in terms of a little bit of movie/TV talk, I am all caught up with Succession. And if you follow me on Instagram, then you would see I did my first ever Volume 1 of Sunday Scaries, which is going to be just something I do now. Go follow me on Instagram to check it out. But it's just going to be me dedicating a whiskey to the week ahead for whatever reason and chugging it. And that's what I did this week. And I did Blanton's because Blanton's is the unofficial official bourbon of Succession, which does not surprise me, but it's the only whiskey I've seen clearly in picture that Roman was drinking. I forgot what season it was, but he clearly had a bottle of Blanton's in his hand and was pouring that. And they drink neat whiskey a lot of the times, and I am in love with Succession. What can I say? I have been hearing good things about it for months now, and I think I've said this on the podcast, the reason I got into it was because I was looking for something to watch while I was doing my cardio every week. I try to do cardio 3 times a week, half hour to 45 minutes on the treadmill. And it gets boring if you're just listening to music or if you're just watching some video you've seen 100 times. So I thought, let's start a show. And that way I will be interested in it, and I'll be able to zone out, for lack of a better term, and be able to focus on the show. The cardio will go by quicker, and I'll be looking forward to cardio. The show I chose was Succession, and here I am, all caught up just in time for the finale next week. I was able to watch it live last night as well, the penultimate episode of Logan's, spoilers right now of Succession. The episode of Logan's funeral. And golly, man, this is a show that you are so pissed at a character at 1 second, and the next second you are wholeheartedly feeling for them. and you're almost rooting for them. I've never had a show make me flip-flop emotions so quickly before. It is an amazingly written show, and it is turning into top 5 all time for me, with 2 of my favorite characters of all time as well in the show. Logan Roy, the main character, the old man, and Roman Roy, played by Kieran Culkin, Macaulay Culkin's brother. Just like the funniest character of all time. Like he reminds me of so many people that I know personally, molded together into just this complete hilarious asshole that I love. I love Roman. But Logan is the OG, and Logan is my favorite character by far. And this past episode was just incredibly emotional, incredibly powerful, and it makes you hate each kid so much more, except for Roman. Roman has a great scene that's very powerful. I won't give it away, but that he has a scene that is quite powerful in this episode. The next episode is the series finale. Succession is ending on top, which I am a big fan of. I think that so many shows nowadays go way past where they should be. For example, The Walking Dead. That's the number one example you can have. I stopped watching The Walking Dead when Glenn and Abraham died, and from what I heard, it just went downhill from there. Another prime example, Game of Thrones. Could have been awesome. A lot of it was due to bad writing, but if it ended after season 6, wouldn't have been mad. The Mandalorian. If season 3 is going to be how we're continuing with The Mandalorian, don't want any more of it. It's not terrible, but seasons 1 and 2 were so good that season 3 had to be perfect for it to live up to season 1 and 2, and it just wasn't. So, Mandalorian, I hope they come back with another season and it's fantastic, but as of right now, went on one season too long. And I'm sure there's a bunch more that I can't think of right now, but really any show that goes past like 5 seasons, nah. Breaking Bad, 5 seasons, I think, perfect length. Succession, 4 seasons. Peaky Blinders, 6 seasons. The sixth season was awesome, but they only had 6 episodes per season. So, kind of shorter in terms of overall screen time. Daredevil, 3 seasons. Perfect. Haunting of Hill House, 1 miniseries. Perfect. What else are my favorite shows? Lucifer was like 1 million seasons, but Lucifer was like 6 seasons. 6 seasons, but they had like 50 episodes per season, and it was awesome. Lucifer is perfect. Don't ever hate on Lucifer. It's awesome. I don't remember what my other... The Boys, going on season 4. Just getting better. So, like, the great shows, typically, like, I would say 5 seasons is the max, with maybe an exception or 2, but most of the time, it's just... If it goes past that, it's time to die. There's nothing wrong with stopping a show, even if it's at the height of its popularity, like Succession is right now. I think it's going to make the show live in infamy because they're stopping it at the height of its popularity and at the height of its critical success. What a great show. I think it might catapult into my top 5. I really do. I've already rewatched certain episodes of it, and that's like insane for me. The only show I've ever rewatched has been all the shows in my top 5. Peaky Blinders, 1 million times. Haunting of Hill House, every fall, 1 million times in the fall. Daredevil, I've rewatched that 2 or 3 times. Lucifer, I haven't rewatched, but that's because there's 1 million episodes per season. And The Boys, I've rewatched season 3. I haven't rewatched the other 2 seasons, but that's my little take on Succession series finale next week. We'll break it down on the show here. I love it. I love it. And I hope, my theory is that none of the kids are going to win, quote unquote. My theory is that they're all going to lose, and the successor will be nobody. Maybe Madsen, or not Madsen, maybe the Gojo guy, Skarsgård. Maybe him. Maybe they'll push the deal through, but Shiv won't win because she's teaming up with him. Mencken or Madsen, I don't know. But my theory is that none of the 3 are going to formally get that CEO, that singular CEO spot. Maybe Connor, just to really throw a wrench in there. But I thought they were going to have Connor win the presidency, but they didn't. Man, 2 hitters back to back. The election night episode was fire. I rewatched that. Like I watched it and then I rewatched it and then I watched it live. No, I watched it last week, early in the week, like Tuesday or Wednesday. Then I watched it again the next day. Then I watched it again yesterday, Sunday, before this past episode. So the rewatchability of Succession is high. It's also like a comedy, basically. It's basically a comedic show, as well as a drama, family drama. It's like a family drama / comedy. It's executive produced by Adam McKay and Will Ferrell. So you know it's going to be some type of comedic element in there. And I don't mean like they're cracking jokes. I just mean like the way it's so obvious they're such assholes and they're so oblivious to it that like it makes it funny. What do we got for MMA news? I think the Ultimate Fighter starts soon. If I'm not mistaken. Sean O'Malley versus Aljamain Sterling was announced for UFC pay-per-view in August in Boston. So your boy is going to do everything in his power to get there. Your boy's also going to be busy probably the rest of the year with something that I cannot talk about, that we will talk about on this podcast in due time. But as of right now, not talking about it. But that might affect my schedule. Anyways, let's go right into the listener questions. I got a bunch, so I wanna break all these down, and I'm gonna give each of them a quality answer, and I'm gonna go into detail of each question. I will mention who the questions are from, and we will go into detail about every single question that we have here. So I want to thank everybody that that submitted questions. I picked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 questions. Most of them are by one guy because they all made me laugh. So let's get right into it. And I'll be doing these questions episode maybe once a month. So I'll probably post the questions throughout the month. I'll post question stickers so that way you guys can ask, and then we will do a questions episode once a month. I'm gonna start cutting back on the whiskey reviews because I don't want to drink that much whiskey. All right. Question number 1 was from Paul on Bourbon with Friends podcast account. Do you come harder? I forgot what that was in reference to. But yes, I do come harder. I wish I remembered what exactly that was. Come harder. Because I remember making that joke, and I don't remember what it was. And it's not come like C-U-M, it's C-O-M-E. Anyways, yes, Paul, I do. This next question, submitted in by Jennifer Brandt, the master blender at Luca Mariano Distillery, very good friend of the podcast, has been on the podcast before as well as a special guest. She asked, are you still obsessed with mellow corn with a winky face? Yeah, Jen, I am obsessed with mellow corn. And I joke about mellow corn a lot on this podcast. And I'm sure a lot of you think that it is a joke. Connor, why would you be obsessed with mellow corn? It's a 100 proof corn whiskey that costs $12. It's not good. Well, the truth is, I like it a lot, and I'm not going to stop drinking it. Matter of fact, I think what I'll do one of these days is I will mix my Metamucil in with my mellow corn. Kind of. That will be really tough because the Metamucil it coagulates or whatever that word is. Coagulates really quickly. And I need a lot of mellow corn to like make sure that it mixes well, and that's just a lot of mellow corn to drink at once. But maybe I'll shoot mellow corn and then I'll wash it down with a glass of Metamucil. That I could do. That I will do. Stay tuned. Next question by the man, the myth, the legend, Derek, Straight Lines and Bourbon. Probably at this point my whiskey boyfriend. Best and worst things about the podcast life. And by the way, I haven't I looked through these questions, but I haven't like pre-planned my answers or anything. So these are all right off the dome. I'll start with the worst thing about the podcast life. The worst thing is that it's work. You know, I think I can speak for all whiskey podcasters, big or small. The ones of us that are here that are consistent with it this is a job, basically. I mean, I am taking time out of my night to record this. It'll take time to upload and edit, and I'll have to sync it with the video in order to upload it to YouTube. I'll have to make my social posts about it to gain traffic. And I don't do this once a week. I do this multiple times a week. I have 2 podcasts, baby. Who gives a dram? Bourbon with Friends, 2 of the biggest whiskey podcasts in the world. So I do this all the time. I'm used to the work now. But that's definitely the worst thing is, you know, if I wasn't recording this right now, I'd probably be in bed. It's 9:00. But I'm here and I'm awake now. I was tired before I pressed record, but it's not easy sometimes, the work and not necessarily the work, but the time that it takes to do this correctly. Because as a podcaster, you need to sound good, and if you're going to be on video, you have to look good, and as in the video quality. I always look good, but the video quality has to be good. Making sure that all looks good and it's presentable and it's to the best of your ability can take time, and the time is probably the worst part of the podcast life. The best thing about the podcast life is by far the connections and networking that you make, the friends that you make, for lack of a better term. Derek, you're an example, but also... man, I mean, I can't even name the people that I've met through both of my podcasts, and the people that I am going to meet as a result of both of my podcasts, which is again something I cannot talk about right now. But the people that I'm going to meet is going to be absolutely absurd here coming up in the next few months. I cannot believe. If you told me May 22nd, the day of this recording, 2021, 2 years ago today, if you told me that you would be heard in over 100 countries with hundreds of thousands of downloads, trips all over the country and internationally to Scotland, man, meeting distillers, meeting celebrities, hanging out with the coolest people in the whiskey community, like it's almost overwhelming. So that is by far the friendships that I've made through this podcast is by far the best part of this podcast. My man Mark from Holyrood Distillery. Shout out to Mark. I want to have Mark on the show. I don't know when we can do that. I hopefully am going to see the Holyrood guys soon on hopefully the podcast or in person. But Mark Watson, who is basically the head guy at Holyrood Distillery, he's been on Bourbon with Friends. He is a fine gentleman, and we got very drunk together in Scotland. But he asks, in his username is Mark, MARC_makes_things. Desert Island Dram right now. And this is actually hilarious because we just talked about this with Chris from the Whiskey Noobs podcast last week. And I just posted that clip today, and I forgot Mark asked this. So that's actually hilarious that he asked this Desert Island Dram right now. And that's a great question. The whiskey that I am drinking the most right at this very second, man, I don't know. If I could only pick one whiskey right now to bring with me, it would 100% be a bourbon. It'd probably be like low mid to mid proof, so like probably not over 110 if I had to guess. What whiskey am I hammering right now? Probably Buffalo Trace. If I had to pick one, it'd probably be Buffalo Trace. I haven't really been drinking a whole lot of Buffalo Trace recently because I don't have any at my house right now, but that's always my go-to. And it might be kind of stereotypical, but it really is one of the best, especially if you can find it for $25 to $35. It's one of the best whiskeys you can buy. And I try to always have a bottle at my house, but I just don't right now. So thank you, Mark, for the question. But if I had to pick a Scotch, I would most likely pick, depending on the climate, I'd still probably pick a peated whiskey because I probably wouldn't drink till night. And I'd probably pick either Bunnahabhain 10-year or not 10-year, 12-year, sorry. Looking behind me. Maybe Ardbeg Wee Beastie or Lagavulin 16 would be the Scotch choice. Irish whiskey choice would most likely be Redbreast 12-year. And a rye whiskey choice would be the Bardstown Origin Series rye, which is like one of my favorite ryes of all time. Rye 3 would be appropriate, especially if it's a tropical island with their rum finish. And again, another one of my favorite ryes of all time. And yeah, those would probably be my answers. So there you go. Next question, Bulletproof Bourbon. My buddy Bulletproof Bourbon. Thanks for being the best half of Bourbon with Friends. You're welcome. And that is fact. I am the best half of Bourbon with Friends. I'm also the youngest. And I'm also the tallest. And I'm probably also the strongest. My buddy Adrian, shout out to Adrian all the way out in Australia. Have you tried any more of those samples I sent you? And the Tim Tams as well. So my buddy Adrian sent me a bunch of Australian whiskey samples. The answer to that question is no. I am waiting to go on your podcast, which is escaping, the name is escaping me right now. I apologize. But Adrian, I'm waiting to go on your podcast. Invite me on, and we'll drink the samples together. Or we just drink them together, even if it's on like a FaceTime or something. We'll make it happen. These next few questions are from my buddy Robbie, Chill Filtered Podcast. And these are the exact questions that I want people to ask because these are right up Who Gives a Dram. The Who Gives a Dram alley are these next few questions. So Robbie from the Chill Filtered podcast asks, number 1, did you ever find Bugs Bunny attractive when he dresses as a girl bunny? And again, I'm answering these questions all seriously. No, but what is it, Lola Bunny from Space Jam with Michael Jordan? I've never seen the new one. She was kind of attractive. I will say that. But I don't know when Bugs Bunny dressed like a girl bunny. I don't know. I've never seen a picture. Robbie, if you send me a picture, I'll give you my honest feedback, but that's yet to be seen. But the Lola Bunny or whatever her name was, she was cute. She was cute. Next question. Given your high protein / whiskey diet, what is the average WPP wipes per poop? This is a fantastic question, Robbie, and I'm glad you asked it. The reason this is a fantastic question because the answer may surprise you. I would say the WPP is probably 1 to 2, and the reason that the WPP is 1 to 2 is because your boy is consistent with his Metamucil intake. And listen to me when I say, if you want your stomach issues, if you want your bloating, and if you're going to the bathroom and it's like water every single day, if you want that to go away, take your Metamucil. Well, first of all, have a better diet. But what's also really going to help is take your Metamucil. You gotta have a good diet. Like, don't stop eating cheeseburgers and shit every day, and maybe not eat as much, but also take your Metamucil, and you'll bring your WPP from 5 or 6 to 1 or 2, which is me. Even with a high coffee diet, I am the guy. I'm drinking 3 to 4, maybe 5 cups of coffee a day. So you would think my WPP would be on average higher because I'm drinking more coffee than the average person, but my daily Metamucil intake negates that. Another question from Robbie. Which whiskey tuber would you like to face in the octagon? Which whiskey tuber? So I'm going to assume whiskey tuber is like a YouTuber, not a podcaster. I don't know. Which whiskey tuber would you like to face in the octagon? I would want to face Eric, Whiskey Mutant, and he's part of the 10 minute, the This Is My Bourbon podcast, and they're on YouTube. And the reason I would face Eric, it has nothing to do with physical violence, but it has everything to do with the fact that I know he's a wrestling fan. So we would get together beforehand and drink a lot of whiskey, but also prepare the most ridiculous wrestling choreography before, and we would choreograph a wrestling match to a T, and we would implement it to be 10 to 15 minutes, and I would probably put Eric over, and I would hope he'd be willing to finish me by either 5-star frog splash or pedigree. So, Eric, that's up to you, buddy. If you want to make that happen, I'm all for it. I've always wanted to go off the top rope on a wrestling ring and see how it actually feels. So if anyone that's listening to this podcast has a standard full-size WWE specific wrestling ring that they have access to that I can roll around on for a little bit, let me know. All right, 2 more questions, both from Robbie. Favorite distillery and experience on your Colorado trip? So I don't have a favorite. I went to 2 distilleries. I went to 291 Distillery in Colorado Springs, and then we hit up 10th Mountain Distillery in Gypsum, and they both were awesome. 291 was a little bit of a blur because we got very drunk. But I remember the nights. It's just like I don't remember how long we were there for. I don't remember anything we talked about on the podcast that we recorded. But it was fun. I mean, talking with Emily there, and talking with everybody there was awesome, and being able to pick a barrel of whiskey from 291 that they so graciously donated to the Bourbon Ball was awesome. So that was a fantastic experience. And also 10th Mountain, they are the main barrel pick sponsor this year, and we got to really go in deep with picking a barrel, and we spent a few hours going through samples and picking our favorite samples, and ultimately picking a fantastic whiskey that we can't wait to bring you guys for the Bourbon Ball. That was a day in of itself. So everybody at 291 and everybody at 10th Mountain were fantastic, and the professionalism from both was awesome. I mean, like, they were the utmost professionals in a whiskey way, because basically what that means is, like, us people in the whiskey business, we like to bust each other's balls, but at the end of the day, we love each other. So that's like everybody at 10th Mountain and at 291. It was ball busting and like whiskey nerding out the entire both nights, which was awesome. That's exactly how I like to. How I like to operate on a day-to-day basis. I don't like to take things too seriously. I'm a professional when it comes to business, when it comes to the podcast, when it comes to work. I'm a professional. I will take my shit seriously. However, I also like to have a silly goose time. So that's literally the entire pretense of this entire podcast. So, but my favorite experience, I loved the whiskey experiences. Don't get me wrong. I loved the whiskey experiences. But driving through the Rocky Mountains was something that was just insane. And Paul and I had never been up close to the Rocky Mountains. And driving through when you're 10,000 feet above sea level, and you go down from driving on top of the Rockies where there's a blizzard, and then you slowly go down, and then once you get to the Denver airport, it's 60 degrees and sunny and dry. Like, that is Colorado. And driving through the Rockies was an experience I will never forget. So that was probably my favorite experience of the Colorado trip. But I loved the entire trip and both distilleries. It was just I'm definitely going to go back. Let's put it that way. I will 100% go back. And then Robbie. Oh, wait, no, that's it. That's it. That's all the questions that I picked. There were a few more, and if I didn't answer your questions, I apologize. I just kind of went through and took screenshots of all the ones that I saw, and I've been doing it throughout the past few days in anticipation to this episode. So we're going to do this maybe once a month, probably once a month. So one episode we'll do listener questions. So I suggest that I implore that you submit your questions so that way we can answer them, or I can answer them. And there'll always be honest answers as well. I mean, I didn't have to tell you the wipes per poop thing, but Robbie, my good friend Robbie, one half of the Chill Filtered podcast, one of my favorite whiskey podcasts, when he asks that, I have to answer out of principle, because that's what men do. With that being said, this is going to be a little bit of a shorter episode. It has been a long week, even though it's already Monday. It's only Monday. It's going to be a long week. There's a lot of things I need to get done. So on that note, I'm going to head out. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Who Gives a Dram. It is much appreciated. Make sure you are following us on all our social media. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are all at Who Gives a Dram. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, Breaker, Overcast, Pandora, Google Music. Anywhere you listen to a podcast, you can find Who Gives a Dram. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, do me a favor, leave me a rating and review. That will help us in the algorithm. If you're listening on Spotify, you can leave a 5-star review if you'd like. And if you press follow, you'll always be alerted when I post a podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit subscribe. It takes 2 seconds. Hit the like button on this video. That'll really help push the video out to more people. Leave a comment. Let me know what are your answers to the questions that I just answered. More specifically, let's say, what is your desert island whiskey? What's your desert island whiskey? You tell me what you would pick. I picked Buffalo Trace as a safe answer. I also picked as a Scotch Lagavulin 16, Ardbeg Wee Beast Year, Bunnahabhain 12 year. Irish, I picked Redbreast 12 year. Rye whiskey, I picked the Bardstown Origin Series rye or the Rye 3 rye whiskey finished in rum casks. Let me know what you would pick. That would, comment that down below if you're watching this on YouTube. We'll be back next week with another fun-filled episode. And that's going to do it, man. I'm tired. So thanks again for tuning in. And always remember, whiskey's the water of life. So let's start living.